Let's turn our discussion to the topic of functions now. You may have heard the term, or be familiar with it, or even have some idea about what a function is. But let's talk about some characteristics so we can get a concrete understanding. We're going to take a little time to talk about what a function actually is and what it's not. Here's some things that we know about functions. For each value of x, there's one corresponding y element. So two different values of x can have the same value of y. But for any given value of x, you can't have multiple values for y. The entire set of x elements is called the domain, and the entire set of y elements is called the range of a function. And as we just said, each x value must correspond to one y value. Two or more x elements may be assigned the same value of y. However, the reverse is not true. For any value of y, you cannot have the same x value. And when we're talking about functions, we usually plug in x values, let the function operate on it, and that gives us the y value. So since the value of y depends on the value of x, we call y the dependent variable. Since the value of x determines the value of y and does not depend on the value of y, we call x the independent variable. So let's pick apart some of the things we said with an example. We said some y values may not have a corresponding x value. So for example, 60 degrees Fahrenheit is an actual temperature. It does exist, but in our given data here, there wasn't a day where the temperature was 60 degrees Fahrenheit. We also said two or more x elements may be assigned the same value of y. Again, the temperature on the 3rd and 6th day of the month was 71 degrees for both days, so that makes sense. Then we also said two values of y cannot represent the same value of x. So as we see here, there was never a day in the domain, or the x values that we're looking at, that had two different temperatures simultaneously, i.e. it was not 68 and 72 degrees simultaneously on a given day. Finally, we can combine most of these statements into one test for a function, and that's called the vertical line test. For any formula that can be expressed in terms of y and x, if you're able to draw a vertical line through the graph of that and hit two or more points, you're not dealing with a function. So for example here, we've drawn a vertical dashed line through this graph and it hits two or more points. Therefore, x squared plus y squared is equal to 9 is not a function. Now I understand this is kind of a vague concept for a lower math class, but if you go to higher math and engineering courses, you'll start to get a bit more of a concept of why it's important. But for now, if you can recognize a few concepts that we covered, you should be good for any problems you get on exams or quizzes. Let's break here. When we come back, we're going to talk about domain, range, and asymptotes of rational functions.